overview on the Battlecruiser changes that are coming in the Vanguard release, which will be arriving on September 29th, so just under 2 weeks' time. So there's been a bit of, before we get into the changes, there's a bit of Reddit saw, I guess, about these metrics that CCP Fozzy has posted in the first post in this thread. And it's about the percentage of how much the battlecruisers are used, and obviously the Navy Drake and the Drake are actually used quite a lot for PvE, especially the Navy Drake, because it has the 8 effective launchers regardless of skills, so it's actually one of the best PvE ships if you have really low skills, because you can get the 8 effective launchers straight away, even with trash skills. But I think on Reddit there's a lot of terrible... a few terrible comments, basically, sort of trashing Fozzy. I think they expected the Drake to be buffed more, and they think that the Drake isn't getting buffed because it's higher on the metrics or something like that, but that's totally not the case. So just to kind of get that out of the way, it's kind of interesting maybe to look at these metrics as well. As you can see, the first of all, we have percentage of all Tech 1 combat battlecruiser jumps. This includes wormholes as well as gates. And I assume it also includes Titan bridges as well. The Drake is obviously the highest because it is the best PvE battlecruiser in the game. Caldari is still probably the most popular PvE race. And it's not really surprising, especially the the Drake Navy issue as well, for the reason that I mentioned. Because it's very effective in the hands of a lower SP pilot than they would be in another ship that requires, like Caldari Cruiser 5 or something. So next up is the Myrmidon is probably the second most popular, and again I think the Myrmidon's also really strong in PvE. It is quite strong in PvP as well, especially in solo and small gang, which is where I'm going to be focusing on in this video. Then we have the Cane. I think the Cane is kind of middle ground right now. I actually kind of really like the Cane. I don't think it's as bad as people say. I think again it's kind of middle of the road for battle cruisers. It does need buffs though, of course, like all of them are getting. Next, the Prophecy and the Harbinger are kind of in the middle together, and I think that's fine. I think they're probably just mostly used for like PvE and PvP in equal applications. Then you have the Ferox and the Brutix, a bit lower at the same rate, and again, both the Ferox and the Brutix are kind of okay for PvP. They're kind of okay for PvE as well. I think the Ferox is inferior to the Drake, obviously, for PvE. And then last you have the Cyclone, which is kind of surprising to me because I really like the Cyclone. I think it's quite balanced, but I guess the Cyclone probably isn't as good for PvE because a lot of the power from the Cyclone comes from the fact that it has it has 2 utility highs, and it's a lot of speed, and that doesn't really translate as well to PvE content. Next you have percentage of all Tech 1 combat BC PvP damage, and this is from ship kill mode, so if a ship didn't die it doesn't count. So it's not, you don't have like some guy getting remote repped forever, getting shot by something that didn't die, that's messing up the statistics. And you also it doesn't include structure damage either. And the Drake has the highest combat battlecruiser PvP damage. Kind of surprising, I guess, but it's still, because I don't really like the Drake, but I guess it's still, people still fly them in fleets, and they're still kind of okay for that. Next up is the Brutix. I think the Brutix is quite good in solo and small gang, especially rail Brutixes are quite strong in small gang cheapo doctrines. And the rest of them below the Drake are kind of evenly spaced out, really. The Hurricane, the Myrmidon, and the Prophecy. Again, all of these, I think the Myrmidon and the Prophecy are kind of the better battlecruisers right now for solo and small gang. The Prophecy especially for fleet. Hurricane, I still think I think the Hurricane's very middle ground. I think the Hurricane's still okay. You've got Ferox, which is a bit lower, but the Ferox has a lot lower damage than the other BCs because it doesn't actually get a damage bonus. Well, it does now, after September 29th, but right now it doesn't get a damage bonus, so it makes sense it being low. Again, the Cyclone has lower damage. I think it's because it's not as popular, and also again a lot of the strength comes from the Cyclone is from utility highs rather than actually direct raw damage, which is what the Brutix is bringing. And I guess kind of surprisingly the Harbinger is dead last, but I actually actually thought the Harbinger was a bit better than this, but it's kind of weird. And again, you have the same stats, but for faction BCs right now. So Brutix Navy is the worst for jumps, but I think that it's also the worst PvE ship. I think a lot of the jump percentages are coming from PvE rather than PvP. And then you kind of have Harb and Hurricane middle ground, and Drake Navy issue a lot more popular for PvE, obviously. And then we have Navy PvP damage, and Brutix Navy issues kind of on top. And I think that's kind of expected. The whole Brutix Navy issue sort of really took off when the structure rigs came into the game. Hurricane Navy issue and Hurricane Fleet issue and Harbinger Navy issue. I don't actually rate the Hurricane Fleet issue all that high, but I guess some people are flying it. And again, I don't think the Hurricane Fleet issue is all that bad. I know a lot of people joke about it being the pre-nerf Kane. The Harbinger Navy issue, I think it was definitely probably my favourite of the combat BCs. I thought the 5 mids and the utility that it gets put it on top, but the Brutix, again, remember this is PvP damage. It doesn't necessarily mean how good they are, essentially. And the Drake Navy issue is dead last, obviously, because it's complete trash in PvP. We can talk about a bit more later, but going into sort of the direct bonuses for the ships now. So the Prophecy, CCP Fozzie says the Prophecy is a solid middle of the road in overall popularity, which is true. I think it's a very flexible ship, and it's fairly well regarded from community feedback. I definitely think that's true, and I definitely think the Prophecy is probably the best doctrine PvP ship right now. I know Providence was using it a lot, and Phoebe Republic use it too. And it's kind of slow, but it's still, I think, still pretty strong for a small gang and solo. And I know RVB gang have done a few Prophecy roams too. So what is happening to the Prophecy? The bonuses are staying identical. It's getting a roll bonus, and all the battlecruisers are getting a roll bonus that helps a bit with their projection. In the case of the drone boats, for the Prophecy and the Myrmidon, it's 12.5% bonus to drone max velocity. It's half the bonus on the Dragoon and the Algus. I guess that's specifically to make it so the Prophecy and the Myrmidon are not as good as the Dragoon and the Algus with small drones, but the bonus still helps moving DPS from target to target for heavy and medium drones. And it's kind of a nice bonus as well, because the Prophecy and the Myrmidon, again, were probably the 2 strongest solo PvP ships out of the lot. In addition to everything else, all of the battlecruisers are getting their average cap per second raised from 3.8, which is current, up to 4. In the case of the Prophecy, it's getting just more base capacitor, so that means it'll be a bit harder to newt it out. It'll also mean if you're doing some shotgun new fit, then you'll get an extra cycle off or whatever on your energy neutralizer, so that can help. The main buff for the Prophecy, and indeed really the only buff here, is they're doing what they've done to a lot of Amar ships, like the Punisher and the Mauler recently, where they're increasing the mass of it. And obviously, increased mass means you align slower and your MWD goes on slower, but what they're doing is they're actually overcompensating with max velocity and the agility being boosted. So what this means is the Prophecy is, not only is it going to be faster than it was before, it's going to align quicker than before, obviously, as well. But the main thing here is, first of all, it'll have improved base velocity when it's scrammed. So if 2 Prophecies are mutually scramming each other, they'll both... Prophecy and another ship are mutually scramming each other. The Prophecy is going to move faster in scram range, and that could help it keep up with targets. It's one of the reasons why the Hikati is really balanced, in my opinion, because it only has 213 meters per second base speed, and it means it gets absolutely wrecked by any cruiser or battlecruiser that can get a scram on it. And so this thing, mostly with the mass thing, why they're doing this is, first of all, it makes you a lot faster when you have a ship scrammed. It also means the mass effect of adding a plate, it's a lower percentage overall mass, if that makes sense. Like, instead of adding 1 million kilometers to 15 million, to 12 million, you're adding it to 15 million instead. And basically what that means is with a plate fitted, it will be faster than it was before, and it also won't take as much as agility penalty when it's fitting the plate. The Prophecy is also getting +1 max lock tight as well. I think all of the battlecruisers are going up to 7. I think that's correct. But anyway, pretty. As I said, the main bonuses to most of the battlecruisers is sort of base capacitor and mobility and this roll bonus, and the Prophecy's getting buffed. But it was already kind of, the buffs aren't too strong, but it was already kind of, I think, the best fleet doctrine fit right now, and it was definitely viable in solo PvP and small gang. Next up is the Harbinger. The Harbinger is probably getting one of the most significant buffs, I guess. We can kind of talk about that. But all the turret ships are getting 25% bonus to optimal range and fall off for all turrets. Well, it's medium energy turret in this case with the Harbinger, but for their respective turret, fall off doesn't really add all that much to poles and beams. But I guess it's still nice to have, and it kind of ties in with this like half bonus thing that they've got going on for the combat BCs. But the significant things with the Harbinger, it's getting a bit more armor, so it will be a bit tankier. It's getting buffed up to almost the same as the Prophecy in base armor, but it's getting quite a lot of capacitor. You see here it's going up to 3,500 base capacitor, and they are actually nerfing the capacitor regen overall, so they can add more base capacitor. So you can see the Prophecy only got 150 base capacitor, but the Harbinger is getting 375, and by having this higher total cap pool, even though the regeneration is the same between all of the battlecruisers, it's 4 average cap per second, the Harbinger is going to be a lot harder to nuke out. It's going to have a much bigger cap pool, despite having the same regen, so it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot less vulnerable to newts. It's also, if it runs like some sort of like high cap fit, it will take longer for it to cap itself out. So it's definitely adding some potential to the Harbinger. And the Harbinger's getting the same treatment as the Prophecy, where they're adding a significant amount of mass, and then giving it a huge boost to base velocity and agility to make up for that. And the Harbinger's actually getting a lot of base speed now. It will actually be faster than a Hecate when you're comparing the two base speeds. So it means that the Harbinger's going to have a lot less tracking problems now, which again is quite significant. The Harbinger's also getting a lot of targeting range. It's getting extra 10 kilometers base, so it should be able to, if you're in a gang with sensor integrity, it should be able to look out to about 100 kilometers now, and that could actually help with micro jump drives quite a lot as well on the Harbinger. And again, it's getting the extra target. So the Ferox, this is probably the biggest change, I guess, is the Ferox. So it's actually losing a shield resistance bonus, and I think this is kind of cool because it kind of like filled the same role as the Drake. It's getting an extra mid to compensate for that. So if you fit an invul 2 there, especially for solo and small gang, like you would never have more than 2 stacking penalties for the invul. So the invul's still going to be better than the shield resistance bonus. I mean, obviously you need to fit CPU and cap for that module, but overall it's a buff for the Ferox, and it's definitely, if you're going for more glass cannon fits or some more control-y fit, then that'll definitely help out a lot more too. The shield resistance bonus is being replaced by damage, and it's getting the 10% medium hybrid turret optimal range is staying, and it's getting the same roll bonus for optimal range and fall of 25%. So the Ferox will actually be very close to hitting out as far as Tengu, but it'll be a lot cheaper, which is quite significant. Another thing I think a lot of people haven't noticed is it's losing a turret, but the 5% medium bonus is going to take it above what it was before. Previously, the Ferox only had 7 effective turrets, but with the 6 times 1.25, it'll now be like 7.5, I believe, something like that. Yeah, 7.5. But the big thing here really is that the power grid and the CPU is not changing, and in fact, it's actually getting a buff to CPU. So despite the fact that it has to fit 1 less gun, it's still keeping all that grid and all that CPU. And if we just skirt down to the Brutix quickly, you'll see here that the Brutix only has 1,125 power grid, 435 CPU, and the Ferox has 1,250 and 530 CPU. So the Ferox, despite having to fit the same guns as the Brutix, has quite significantly more fittings. So moving on from the Ferox down to what else it's getting a bit more shields as well. So again, it did lose that shield resistance bonus. It is getting the mid, and you got the CPU. You can fit it in Vol 2 there, and it's going to, in most cases, unless you're running like a free hardener fit in the fleet or something, it's going to more than compensate you with that mid slot. And then again, an extra 250 base shield HP will also really help out there as well. So it's definitely going to get more effective hit points after the patch, despite the fact that it did lose that shield resistance bonus. Unless, you have like more than 2 stacking mods on the same thing. The Ferox is getting a bit more capacitor as well. It's going up to 4 average cap per second, like all of the BCs. The cap regen is getting nerfed like very insignificantly, and then it's getting a bit more base cap. So again, the Ferox will be harder to nuke out. The Ferox isn't getting as much mobility as the Amar ships. It's only getting an extra 10 meters per second extra velocity, and it's also getting quite a bit more agility though as well. The line time is going down by half a second. It is getting a lot more lock range as well. It's going up to 75 kilometers, which is plus 10. So it will be able to snipe out to the new long range that it's going to be able to achieve. I think the Ferox is definitely going to be the ship that a lot of nullsec pilots are going to be most excited for cheap doctrines. Especially since the range bonus is a roll bonus instead of an actually on the ship bonus. It means that even with low SP, even if you have, let's say Battlecruiser level 3, you're still going to be able to like snipe out to what would be like normal sniping ranges for a Ferox that has level 5 before the patch. So yeah, definitely, I think the Ferox is probably the one that's changed the most significantly. Definitely been buffed a lot, and I think definitely I've seen other people's opinions on it, and I did mention it. I was on the Jeff Rader show, and I did mention that the fittings not being lowered despite it losing a gun is quite significant, but not a lot of people have actually really picked up on it. So I definitely think it's worth repeating that the Ferox is going to have a lot of fitting, and it's going to be really strong, I think, in solo PvP. I think it will be being able to fit a extra large auxiliary shield booster on it with like micro-drive scram web, then like an invol, and like possibly something else like a large shield extender is definitely going to be possible. So I think it's definitely going to be a lot stronger in solo PvP too. So going on to the favorite, the Drake, the one that everyone has a lot of thought about. I guess I can talk a bit about this kinetic bonus, which isn't changing. I kind of disagree with CCP Fuzzy here. So the Drake is still keeping the 10% bonus to kinetic damage, and it has 6 launchers. So it has 6 universal launchers when it's not using kinetic, and then it has 9 kinetic launchers, effective launchers. I'm getting my words mixed up a bit. So CCP Fozzy says that kinetic damage, some people are going to be disappointed that the damage bonus continues to be restricted to kinetic, but we do believe that the damage specific bonuses are a useful tool for creating interesting distinctions between ships, and we have no plans to phase them out. So I kind of agree with him that kinetic lock bonuses can be useful in some cases, because by locking a ship to kinetic only, you can increase the power of that ship, of that bonus, to a level that's above the normal, and then it still kind of works out, even though you're trading the selectable damage type bonus for ships. So for example, take a look at the Hawk. The Hawk gets a huge bonus to kinetic damage. It gets 10% to kinetic, then it also gets a 5% rate of fire bonus, right? So those two bonuses combined are really strong, because the Hawk almost has 8 effective launchers, which is really insane for a frigate. Like, that's more than what a Garma does. That's 33% more than what a Hookbill has for kinetic damage. That's huge. But if you take away that kinetic damage, right, like if the Hawk has to load explosive, for example, then the Hawk only has like 5.3. Like it's got the same damage as the Kestrel almost, right? The Kestrel has 5% damage. The Hawk has 5% rate of fire, so it's like 33% instead of 25%. But it creates that interesting distinction, right? Like, that's a case where kinetic damage works, because when the Hawk has kinetic, it does a lot of damage and it's super powerful. But like when you have to load a different type, the Hawk suddenly loses quite a lot of power, and it becomes closer to the Kestrel again. in terms of damage output. And I think that's the case where it really works, right? And going on to the Drake, for this 10% kinetic damage bonus, I think missiles on cruiser hulls have power creeped really hard in the past year or so, since the Kronos expansion. So, for example, if we look at other ships that use missile launchers, you'll see the Cerberus has 8 effective universal launchers, right? It has 6 base times 1.33 because of the 5% rate of fire bonus, which makes 8 effective launchers. And then it has 5% kinetic, and then you times 8 by 1.25 is 10 kinetic launchers or 8 universal launchers. So the Cerberus is doing 33% more damage, non-kinetic damage than the Drake, and it's also doing more. It's also doing a bit like 12% more kinetic damage than the Drake as well. And I don't really like that. Also, again, everyone's favorite balanced ship, the Orpheus, has 10 universal launchers. So I kind of feel like it's not justified in this case. Like, if the Drake had more damage, but it was limited to kinetic only, I would kind of agree with this. I don't really agree with the fact that it only has 9 locked-in kinetic launchers, because, again, the Cerberus outdamages it, the Tengu outdamages it, the Orpheus outdamages it. A healer with thermal missiles loaded has the same damage as the Drake does with thermal missiles loaded. Like, I don't think it justifies the kinetic lock on the Drake. Although, again, the Drake does have a shield resistance bonus. It's a lot more tankier, obviously, so maybe relying on it too much for damage is maybe the wrong point of view here. But I think the Drake, given all the weaknesses that the Drake has compared to the Orpheus and the Cerberus when it comes to speed, when it comes to projection, it kind of sucks that they still both outdamage it, especially if you compare Drake to a Cerberus. Like, the Cerberus already has better resist, it has better sensor strength, has better targeting range, has double bonus missiles for range. The Cerberus just has so much more going for it than the Drake, and it's kind of a shame that the Drake doesn't outdamage the Cerberus, I guess. Like, it's kind of like if a Corax got outdamaged by a Hawk, and it kind of almost does actually with kinetic. But in this case, it's like if the Hawk did outdamage a Corax or Drake, then the Corax would be worthless, right? Like, it's just kind of the same problem with the Drake. I don't think it does enough damage in today's power creeped missiles, and especially as this bonus doesn't actually apply to rapid lights, like the Orpheus and the Cerberus do, and rapid lights are the most overpowered weapon system in the current meta. They are according to the public metrics that I have access to, like Z Keyboard, etc. I think this was also confirmed by CCP on Slack at some point, but rapid lights are now the most used medium weapon system in the game. They're ahead of medium blasters now, and they are also, I think, like, used like 4 times more than heavy missiles or heavy assault missiles. So they're really crazy, and the fact that a Drake doesn't apply to rapid lights is kind of a downer, I guess. So sorry to go off on that. The Drake is getting 25% bonus to missile velocity. I don't think this is going to really help too much. I mean, maybe with HMLs and maybe with hams a little bit. Again, like I mentioned, the Cerberus does more damage, it has better range. The Orpheus does more damage, it has better range. So I don't think too much is changing here. Again, it will help the Drake a little bit. I think this is kind of why people on Reddit are salty. They think like CCP is not buffing the Drake as much as they possibly could, and that's kind of why they're talking about the metrics and thinking that they looked at the metrics and then like downscaled the Drake buffs or something. But a lot of the buffs on the Drake are very well hidden, and I think a lot of people won't understand them very well without looking deeper into the picture. So let's look deeper into that picture. So the Drake is getting an extra 30 power grid, and this is really significant, actually. The Drake actually used to have to fit 2 meta large shield extenders, and it still couldn't fit a small Newt or small Nos in the utility high slot prior to the Carnix expansion. Okay, but then the Tirocide happened for MWDs and large shield extenders, and if you use the compact micro warp drive, which didn't exist before, you could fit 2 large shield extenders on the Drake, but you still wouldn't be able to fill that utility high. This extra power grid That's with max fitting source, by the way. This extra power grid is going to make it a lot easier to fit a heavy assault missile launcher Drake with that utility high, even if you don't have shield upgrades 5, which I don't think most people do have. So it's definitely going to help. It's going to give a bit more power to the heavy assault missile launcher Drake, especially for lower SP pilots. The Drake's also getting a bit more shields. It's definitely going to help out a little bit, I guess. Again, the Drake is getting its capacitor regen bumped up to 4 average cap per second. In the Drake's case, so they're not buffing the max capacitor, they're lowering the cap regen. So what this means is the Drake is still going to be kind of it's not going to get the same like better resistance to nukes that the other ones are getting that got buffed. But coming on to the main bonuses to the Drake, that are actually quite significant. So the Drake is getting 10 meters per second faster. One of the reasons why the Drake is trashed on PvP on TQ right now is because the Raven is faster than it, right? And the Raven can fit rapid heavy missile launchers and basically do the exact same role as the Drake with selectable damage type and not being kinetic locked and having a lot more benefits that the Raven has over the Drake. You know, aside from cost and warp speed and scan resolution, which is all the Drake really has over the Raven. Again, the Drake is actually losing a significant amount of mass. It's losing about 10% of its mass. So with the 10 ms and the mass reduction, it's also getting a small the agility is kind of staying the same actually, but because of the mass reduction, it's going to get a lot more better align time. So you see here it's going down to 12.6, which is shaving off like a second of its align time. So this means is the Drake will be a lot faster with micro warp drive on, which is something it definitely needed to be able to be competitive with the Raven. I still kind of think the Drake is not going to take off very well. I think in this case it doesn't do enough damage, and being kinetic locked is kind of terrible for the Drake. It's getting a small target range bonus. I think the Drake is going to be terrible. It's going to be better than it was, obviously, but I don't think it's really going to change much. It is getting faster. It's getting more fittings, but it's kinetic locked, and it does lower damage than the other cruisers and like the Orpheus and the Cerberus. So I don't really see this really replacing them in any way. I think if it was a clumsier ship that was kinetic locked, but it outdamaged those ships, it would maybe be worth flying, sort of like a hand brawler or something. But in this case, I really don't think it will be. So I think the Drake is slightly disappointing. But moving on to greener pastures, the Brutix. Now, the Brutix is going to, as CCP Fuzzy says here, is going to be the most agile T1 battlecruiser now. It's also getting whole HP and extra drone capacity. So the Brutix is getting the 25% bonus to medium hybrid turret optimal range and fall off. So that's going to help out with null, especially, as well as with blasters, and it's going to help with rail speed as well. It won't be able to shoot out as far as the Ferox, and I think the Ferox is going to be the superior fleet platform. But it definitely could help, especially people were using rail Brutixes before, and the Brutix is going to have a significant amount of mobility. But I think the Brutix is going to be more of like a solo ship, small gang ship, and it already kind of was, right? I mean, people were already doing Ferox doctrines over Brutix doctrines, so talking about the power grid on the Brutix is being unchanged, and the Ferox, again, the power grid on it directly is not getting buffed, but the fact that it already had better power grid than the Brutix and it's not getting taken away despite it being able to fit an extra gun, I think will probably make the Ferox a bit better than the Brutix on that front. But the Brutix is getting 250 more whole HP, which will be a slight buff to whole HP Brutixes, and whole HP battlecruiser is actually quite cool for economical PvP, like because the medium hull rigs are really cheap. I think you could actually have like a really efficient hull rig Brutix fit. The Brutix is kind of getting a mixed buff on the capacitor front. It's getting slightly better regen and a bit more cap, so it will be harder to nuke, not as much as the Harbinger got buffed by. It's kind of like middle of the road, it's kind of getting both equally, and it's being buffed up to the same as the others overall. Mobility. Now this is where the main buffs on the Brutix are coming in. Brutix is getting five more meters per second. It's getting better agility as well. But the main thing here is the lower mass. The Brutix already had a very low mass in relation to most battle cruisers, and with them shaving off even more mass on top of the extra agility, it's actually going to be pretty fast now. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Brutix actually comes close to some cruisers in agility. And that's going to make it a lot easier for roaming, I think. I think the Cyclone will still be faster. The Cyclone was already the fastest ship. I think it's getting, again, significant mobility buffs. We'll get onto those later. But the Brutix, I think, will be the second fastest. And it will be the most agile. So the Brutix will probably be one of the better ones for roaming solo in nullsec. The extra drone bay, that's getting an extra 25 meters cubed drone bay. So before you had to kind of choose between carrying 2 sets of light drones or 1 set of medium drones, right? Which kind of sucked because, you know, if you didn't have the mediums, then you'd do less damage to bigger ships. If you didn't have the lights, then you wouldn't be able to escape from like some interceptors. So, you know, being able to carry a set of lights and a set of mediums will really help. Like, you can carry a set of damaged mediums and a set of damaged lights, or a set of EC 300s if you're a dishonorable scumbag. But the Brutix is getting a bit more targeting range as well. Overall, I think the Brutix it was kind of one of the more healthy ones on TQ, and the significant mobility buffs here will definitely help out a lot. So moving on to Myrmidon. The Myrmidon was the best solo PvP battlecruiser, I think. And so, as CCP Fozzie says in the description, it's getting the least buffed, but it was already the most powerful and probably the most viable of them for solo PvP. You know, the triple rep Myrmidon is still a machine, despite all the misfortune that sort of battlecruisers have kind of had in the current meta. So the Myrmidon is getting the same roll bonus as the Prophecy, the 12.5% bonus to drone max velocity, which will help out a bit with drones moving from target to target. So it's a slight DPS increase. It also can help a bit with, like, for example, Valkyrie 2s with this bonus will be pushed up above 4 kilometers a second. So it could be quite significant for killing like Intosis Link dudes and stuff like that. Moving on to other things, the Myrmidon is getting it's kind of the same thing with the Brutix. Is getting a bit more cap, a bit less bit better regeneration rate. So it's not really getting too much significant capacitor buffs. The max capacitor isn't getting buffed as much as the Harbinger, but in this case, it's just getting middle of the road sort of buffs, and the cap will be better after the patch. And it's also getting some mobility increases like the Brutix did get, but they're not as significant as the Brutix. They're not as high as what the Brutix got. So the base speed is staying exactly the same, but the Myrmidon is losing some mass, and it is getting slightly better agility. And nothing else really is changing on the Myrmidon. So the Cyclone, and this is one of the ones that I love. You know, I've got a Cyclone video on my YouTube. I'm sure some of you have seen it. I think the Cyclone was probably one of the best roaming PvP battlecruisers in the game. I still think, you know, it's my favorite one, and I still think it's really good. I think it's really underestimated, as CCP Fozzie says. The 2 utility highs are definitely not to be underestimated. I know it has low effective missile launchers. You know, it has 6.66, the same as the Caracal. But the 2 utility highs are really significant. So how is the Cyclone getting buffed anyway? So it's getting the 25% bonus to missile velocity, so that will kind of help out with heavy missile launchers a bit, especially if you're loading Tech 2 ammo. I know if you're taking a blue pill, I think it's blue pill, blue pill, if you get the missile velocity penalty, this bonus will actually help you. So you could actually like get your missiles missing at the edge of heated scram range, so this bonus will definitely help here. It might also help like some weird like kiting HML cyclones, which definitely could be a thing. And overall, it's not. I don't think it's as powerful and as significant as the other bonus, the other one on the turret ships, but it's still quite nice to have. So the Cyclone is getting a bit more shields, 250 more shields. We'll just give it a bit more buffer. so that's kind of nice. It's kind of getting the same middle of the road changes. No real. It's getting a bit more max capacitor, a bit better regeneration overall. It's not being like stacked up heavily into max capacitor like the others. So kind of just getting buffed really. The big one for the Cyclone is the fact that it's getting 15 meters per second base velocity, which is pretty significant, especially as it's actually losing mass instead of the Prophecy and the Harbinger, which had added 20, added 25 for the Harbinger base velocity. So the Cyclone's going to be significantly faster, and it already was fast, and it's also losing mass too. It's also getting an agility buff, and it was already agile, man. Like, this is going to be a dream. I'm really looking forward to flying the Cyclone after the patch. My Cyclone fit with the double nano that I used to fly, it goes like 1.6 kilometers a second. That's unlinked with a cheap 3% speed implant. I think after the patch, it's going to be like more like 1.8 kilometers a second, which is crazy. Like, you'll be able to attack cruisers with this. It's going to be great. Nothing really changing on the drone front, and the extra agility will help for roaming too, obviously. The extra targeting range is nice because the Cyclone kind of had like really gimped targeting range. It had 45 kilometers base, so that's just kind of nice. I guess it will help a bit with if you decide to use the HML kite fit, but otherwise it's kind of the same good old thing, but they're really boosting the mobility, and that's gonna be really excited for the Cyclone. A lot of people are saying that it's kind of like the worst one or something. I think the Cyclone is probably one of the best in my opinion. But I really value mobility, so maybe I'm overestimating it a bit. But I think the Cyclone will be a machine after the patch. Definitely going to be one of the best battle cruisers for ramming cruisers for sure. So Hurricane. The old school Hurricane. So the Hurricane's getting the same roll bonus. It's getting 25% turret optimal range and fall off. The optimal range is obviously not going to do too much for autocannons, but the 25% fall off is really nice. It's actually better than a free tracking enhancer. Actually, if you're fitting like 2 tracking enhancers on a cane, like when they were nerfed from 30% fall off to 20% fall off, you're kind of going to get like the same thing. So it's kind of like the autocannon Hurricane from back before is kind of back. And if you don't, and if you're like not fitting tracking enhancers, you're still going to get the 25% fall off, which will help out. It is nice. And again, for artillery, this will the optimal and the fall off are definitely significant. So the Hurricane is also getting an extra 15 power grid. There were some fits that were just really shy that just needed that 1% power grid implant. Like, I think I had like 2 that needed like a 1% grid implant or whatever. So that's really helpful. It definitely help you fit that utility high on a medium autocannon fit. And it's also really going to help out with artillery fits as well. It's also getting a bit more base shields as well, going up to 4,500, so it now have the same base shield as the base armor. Always thought it was kind of weird. I know it gets 6 lows and 4 mids, but most people shield tanked Hurricanes, and even though I do armor tank mine, and I've been flying it quite a lot recently, and I think it's actually a lot better than what people expect right now. So after the patch, it's going to be fun to try it out. But so the extra tank's going to help out a bit. Capacitor is kind of the same story as the last 3 I've mentioned, where it's just getting buffed. Nothing really significant to really talk about there. The mobility on the Hurricane is actually increasing quite a lot. It's getting the same plus 15 base velocity as the Cyclone is. It's not getting the mass reduction, and it is getting a bit more agility though than the Cyclone. So overall, it's going to align almost as fast as the Cyclone. It won't be as fast, but it's going to be faster than it was pre-patch. The Hurricane is getting extra drone bay as well. It's going up to 40 meters cubed instead of 30 meters cubed. So you will be able to do 3 mediums, 2 lights now instead of 4 lights, 1 medium, which would definitely help. Or you can also carry backup lights. Like you could have like a 5 lights and just 3 lights in case you lose your light drone. So that's definitely going to help out. It's getting more targeting range as well, going up to 60 kilometers. The bad targeting range on the Hurricane was definitely kind of restrictive on some artillery fits, so that's definitely going to help out there. And just really solid changes for the Hurricane. It's definitely going to be seen a lot more now, I think. So on to probably the most exciting part, the Navy battlecruisers. So starting from the Harbinger Navy issue. So what they're doing is they're giving the same roll bonus, obviously, as the previous one, but they're also increasing the drone bays, and they're increasing the mobility on these quite significantly, as you will see. So a lot of people are really super excited for these. So Harbinger Navy issue, the Harbinger's getting the 25% optimal bonus, and the fall off bonus, of course, as well, but it's not that significant. The main thing here is going to have a tracking speed bonus and an optimal bonus on the same ship, which is really powerful. It's definitely gonna be like the go-to like anti-support battlecruiser, I think. What else is significant? It's getting a bit more armor as well, just like the same as the Harbinger. It's getting extra armor to help it out. Again, on the capacitor, like the Harbinger, we're seeing them increase the regeneration time, which is a nerf, so the capacitor takes longer to recharge, but they're overcompensating with that by increasing the base amount, so that what that means is you'll be a lot more resistant to nukes in the Harbinger Navy issue. And also if you're just like using your cap like within 1 minute or something, that'll help you get off an extra few cycles of your modules. And again, overall the base capacitor will be the same as all of the battlecruisers as they are now, but it's just going to help give it a bit more new resistance. It's getting the same base velocity buffs as the Harbinger did, where they're adding mass to it, but they're also overcompensating with agility and max velocity. So again, it's going to be a bit faster when it's scrammed. Adding a plate is not going to nerf your agility and speed as much as it did before the patch. You can see that's actually getting a huge agility buff here, like minus 2 seconds of the align time. That's really huge. It's actually going to, I think it's really close to what the Brutix is, and that was going to be the fastest aligning Tech 1 battlecruiser. So it's definitely going, all the Navy battlecruisers are kind of getting this treatment. They're going to be really fast aligners. The Harbinger Navy is just getting the same drone bay as the base Harbinger now as well. It's getting 75 bay and 50 bandwidth, so you'll be able to carry a flight of mediums and a flight of lights in your Harbinger Navy issue, which is definitely going to help out a lot when you're roaming in nullsec. It's getting a significant amount of max targeting range, so plus 15 kilometers. That's pretty huge. So it'll have 70 kilometers base, and it will be able to snipe out quite far. we definitely might see some Navy battlecruiser doctrines. So moving on to the Drake Navy issue. Now, the Drake Navy issue was definitely the worst one for direct PvP. It was good for PvE, and it's also going to be a lot better for PvE now. So the biggest change with the Drake Navy issue is it used to have a 10% bonus to missile velocity, 5% bonus to explosion radius. Because it's getting the velocity bonus on the roll bonus, they're removing the velocity bonus and replacing it with a 4% bonus to shield resistances. So the Drake Navy issue will now have the same shield resistance bonus as the regular Drake. On top of that, it's also getting a bit more shields as well. So the Drake Navy issue will actually have a pretty insane passive tank. It's going to be really tanky. And just like the Drake, it's getting a much better power grid now as well. Now it won't have less power grid it won't have the same power grid as the Orpheus, everyone's favorite balanced ship. So that's definitely going to help out with fitting those extra launches that it has. And Drake Navy issues will definitely be much more enforced now. And also, because it doesn't get a direct damage bonus, and like although you would be losing out on the explosion radius bonus, 8 rapid light missile launcher Drake Navy issues could definitely be a thing. Like that's what I'm predicting. You have like huge grid and pretty decent speed, and the roll bonus will apply to all missiles because it's to missile velocity. So rapid light Drake Navy issues could well be a thing, and CCP might have opened up a new type of what I would call cancer for my frigate roaming. But yeah, the defenses have gone up again, like I mentioned. The extra 375 shields has 8,250 base shields. Like that's actually more than some battleships, I think. Like I think that's more than the Raven has. It might even be more than what the Rock has, to be honest. With the shield resistance bonus, it's going to give it a huge, like, shield tank. It's getting the same treatment as the Drake on the capacitor. It's not getting any extra max capacitor, but it's getting all of that extra regen that all of them have in the regeneration rate. The biggest buffs and the thing that's got everyone super excited for the Drake Navy issue, though, is the mobility buffs. So CCP Fuzzy said that it's going to be the most agile of all the Navy BCs, and the Navy BCs are, most of them are better at aligning than the Tech 1 battle cruisers. It's getting 30 base velocity added. Like, that's huge. It is getting a bit more mass, but it's not as much as what the Harbinger and the Prophecy got. So it's going to be a lot faster. Like, I know, I think Durf Ramir from, which is like an old Podler fanboy, is definitely going to be super excited about flying the Podler Drake again with this. And you can see here, shaving 2 seconds off the align time. That's really huge, off the base align time. The Drake Navy is also getting a huge drone bay. Well, huge relative to what most Qadari ships have. It's going up to 50 meters cube bandwidth and 75 drone bay. Before, it only could use 5 lights. Now I can use 5 mediums, 5 lights, which is really going to boost the DPS a bit more, and also boost utility a bit more as well. It's also getting a huge targeting range too. So yeah, Drake Navy issue going from the worst to probably one of the best. Again, all the Navy BCs are really super exciting. Brutix Navy issue. This one's probably changing the least, but again, it was probably the best one. I kind of like the Harbinger Navy issue a bit more, but the Drake Navy issue, the Brutix Navy issue certainly was probably one of the strongest Navy battlecruisers, and probably the one that was used the most. And I think it's the only Navy battlecruiser that made its way into Alliance Tournament, which is a good sign to sort of show if it's healthy or not. But anyway, it's getting extra hull, 375 hull, so the hull Brutix will be even stronger after the patch, and of course it's getting the roll bonus with the 25% bonus to optimal range and fall off, so again, your blaster hull Brutix will be able to project further. Definitely going to help out projecting out past scram range with Null. It's getting middle of the road capacitor buffs, a bit more base cap, a bit better regeneration. Overall, it's going to have the same as all the other Navy BCs, obviously, but definitely going to just help out a bit more there. It's getting faster as well. Not quite as significant as the Brutix in speed increase, but the Brutix Navy is just already kind of fast for a battlecruiser. But it is getting really good agility boost right here. So it's getting 10 meters per second extra onto the base velocity. Then it's getting quite a lot of agility, and then just a bit more mass reduction. That's shaving off like an extra second of its align time, a bit more than an extra second of this align time. And it will align just over 10 seconds on the base. So with max skills, it's actually going to have like a 6-second align time, I believe, which is really good. Like, I think the Brutix Navy issue might align faster than some cruisers. The Brutix Navy is also getting the same treatment as the regular Brutix with the drone bay, where it's getting the drone bay bumped up by 25 meters cubed, so you'll now be able to carry a set of mediums and a set of lights instead of choosing between lights and mediums. And it's getting extra lock range like all of the rest. Again, Brutix Navy issue definitely going to be, it's already strong, going to be stronger after the patch. This is one of the ones that really super exciting. Hurricane Fleet issue. It's going to be like the dream artillery boat, and it also might be super strong with autocannons. So the Hurricane Fleet issue is getting the the normal Hurricane has 5% rate of fire, 5% damage. It's the bonuses are being merged together to 10% damage. It is a slight DPS decrease because the two bonuses multiplied together, and the fact that one of them was rate of fire instead of direct damage. But CCP are making up for this by increasing its drone bay to be able to field 5 mediums instead of like a bit more than 5 lights. So the damage loss from there will not be as significant. But the main thing here is because they've merged the two bonuses into one bigger bonus, they now put on a 10% bonus to turret tracking, which is the same as the Stab of Fleet issue actually has. So it's going to be really strong with medium artillery, like 50% tracking bonus is going to be huge for that. Also for medium autocannons as well, 50% tracking. And then, of course, in conjunction with the 25% roll bonus for optimal range and fall off. So super strong, just like the just like the Harbinger Navy issue, having both tracking speed and optimal range and fall off is gonna make it really good at anti-support. It's getting extra grid as well, just like the Hurricane, the regular Hurricane. So you will be able to fit artillery a bit better, as well as the fact that it still does have those 2 utility high slots, which you will be able to utilize a lot easier now. It's getting more shields, same as the Hurricane. It's getting its shields boosted up to the same as its base armor. For the Capasso, it's just getting the same middle of the road. Nothing really to mention here. Just it's getting boosted up to the new average cap per second for everything. For mobility, the Harbinger Navy is getting quite a lot of buffs here. So they're boosting the base velocity. They are adding mass to it, so up to the same as the current K now. But they are overcompensating with max velocity and the agility. So what that means is, just like the Harbinger and the Prophecy change that we talked about, if you're fitting a plate to it, it will be faster with micro warp drive on after the patch than before the patch. Even if they did not overcompensate it, even if they kept the speed, like overall speeds the same before fitting a plate. And the main thing here is it's getting really huge agility bonus. It's losing an extra 1.38 seconds of the align time. As we mentioned, the drone bay is getting boosted up a lot to sort of make up for the small bit of damage that it lost. So now it has 5 medium drones instead of just like 5 lights normally, or like 4 lights or medium. And it's getting a lot of targeting range too, so you'll definitely be able to use this as a artillery platform. So those are the combat battlecruiser changes. Now, I'm super excited for these. Like, all of the Navy BCs are really, really strong. I think all of these are really good. I'm pretty excited about almost every ship on this list, to be honest. The only one that I kind of don't like is the Drake. Like I said, I do agree that that kinetic damage bonuses can be a useful balancing tool for being able to boost the damage up while making it balanced, right? Like I said, like the Hawk is a good example of that, where it has like crazy damage, but also if you can't use that kinetic damage, then the damage is actually kind of mediocre. And the Flycatcher is another good example of a ship like that, where it has the 50% bonus to kinetic, which takes it up from 7 to 10.5 effective launches. But because if it cannot use that bonus, then it actually only has 7 effective launches, as opposed to the Heretic, for example, which has like 9.33. I think that's right. Like, so I don't agree with the kinetic lock on the Drake in this instance, because of the power creep and sort of like where the current Serb and Orpheus are sitting with effective launches. It means they just outdamage the Drake, and they have the same drone bay as the Drake as well, right? Like the Cerberus has 2 less lights than the Drake, and the Orpheus has the identical drone bay to the Drake. The Orpheus has more power grid than the Drake as well. It also has the stronger velocity bonus, and it also has the extra fittings as well, because typically it's going to be fitting rapid light. So Orpheus can fit medium new and all the extra large auxiliary or large shield extenders, whatever it wants, basically, right? So Drake is a bit more disappointing, but I think everything else is going to be super exciting, and I'm definitely going to be flying a lot of battle cruisers in October after this patch hits. So I hope this insight was useful, and it's just like me kind of like just blabbering on and talking to myself for a bit, but I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you again next time.